6 months later, the incident continued to resonate around the world. James Thompson had been promoted and was now helping to train new royal guards, using his experience as an example of how to maintain composure under pressure. His story was taught in military academies as a masterclass in professional restraint and duty. Sarah Mitchell faced a very different fate. She was convicted of assault and received a suspended sentence, along with community service requirements and mandatory anger management classes. Her career in marketing was effectively over, as no reputable firm would hire someone with her public reputation. She had become a cautionary tale about the consequences of entitled behavior. The video of the incident had been viewed over 50 million times across various platforms, making it one of the most watched examples of military professionalism in internet history. It was used in training programs, educational settings, and as inspiration for people facing their own difficult situations requiring self-control and dignity. James Thompson received thousands of letters from around the world, thanking him for his service and expressing admiration for his conduct. Many came from other military personnel, sharing their own stories of maintaining discipline under pressure. Others came from teachers using his example to educate students about character and integrity. The annual royal parade the following year drew record crowds, with many people specifically hoping to see the Guard, who had become an international symbol of military professionalism. James Thompson was assigned to the same position where the incident had occurred, and the crowd's reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with spontaneous applause breaking out when he took his position. Sarah attempted several times to rehabilitate her public image, including writing a book about her experience and the lessons she claimed to have learned. The book was poorly received, with critics noting that she still seemed to blame external factors for her behavior, rather than taking full responsibility for her actions. The incident had broader cultural impacts as well. Customer service training programs began using the video as an example of maintaining professionalism in difficult situations. Parents shared the story with their children as a lesson about respect for others and the importance of self-control. The phrase "Royal Guard composure" entered common usage to describe exceptional calm under pressure. Military mental health professionals studied the incident as well, noting how James Thompson's training and character had allowed him to process and handle an extremely stressful situation without losing control. His example was used to develop better stress management techniques for soldiers in various challenging assignments. The contrast between the two main characters became a popular subject for motivational speakers and life coaches. James Thompson represented discipline, duty, and honor, while Sarah Mitchell had become a symbol of everything wrong with entitled behavior and lack of self-awareness in modern society. Years later, when asked about the incident in interviews, James Thompson remained humble and focused on his duty rather than personal recognition. "I was trained to stand my post and protect the ceremony," he would say. "That's what I did. Any of my fellow guards would have done the same thing." The incident proved that in an age of social media and instant global communication, character and integrity could still shine through and inspire people worldwide. It showed that doing the right thing, even when no one seems to be watching, can have impacts far beyond what anyone might expect. The Royal Guard training program began receiving applications from around the world, with many candidates specifically citing James Thompson's example as their inspiration for wanting to serve. The incident had transformed from a moment of conflict into a lasting testament to the power of professionalism, discipline, and quiet heroism in the face of adversity. The legacy of that morning's events continued to inspire new generations of service members and civilians alike, proving that sometimes the most powerful response to aggression and entitlement is simply standing firm with dignity and honor, regardless of the personal cost. Within hours, the story had spread across the globe. International news networks picked up the footage, and James Thompson's face appeared on television screens from New York to Tokyo. The narrative was consistent everywhere. A brave soldier had shown incredible restraint when attacked by an entitled civilian, and the public's response had been overwhelmingly supportive of military professionalism. Sarah, meanwhile, was discovering the harsh reality of internet fame. Her identity had been uncovered within hours, and her social media accounts were flooded with criticism from people around the world. Her employer, a prestigious marketing firm in London, received hundreds of calls demanding her dismissal. By evening, she had been placed on indefinite leave pending a full investigation. The military brass moved quickly to address the situation. James Thompson's commanding officer issued a statement praising his conduct and announcing that he would receive a commendation for his professionalism under pressure. Soldier Thompson exemplified the highest standards of the Royal Guard. The statement read, "His restraint and dignity in the face of unprovoked assault represents the best of military service." Support for James Thompson came from unexpected places. Professional athletes posted messages of respect on social media, comparing his mental toughness to that required in championship competitions. Movie stars shared the videos with messages about real heroes versus fictional ones. Even international, military leaders praised the example he had set for soldiers worldwide. The family who had been waiting since dawn to see the parade, the elderly couple with their grandson, were interviewed by local television. "We were so upset when that woman pushed past us," said the grandmother. "But seeing how that brave soldier handled himself made the whole day special in a different way. Our grandson learned something about character that he'll never forget." Legal experts began analyzing the incident, confirming that Sarah could face charges for assault against a public official. The video evidence was clear and undeniable, and the fact that it had occurred during a royal ceremony added additional legal complications. Her attempts to claim self-defense were laughed out of serious consideration by anyone who had seen the footage. James Thompson himself finally broke his silence that evening in a brief statement through his military representatives. "I was simply doing my duty as a member of the Royal Guard," he said. "I appreciate the support from the public, but I was just following my training and serving my country as I swore to do." The incident sparked broader conversations about entitlement culture and respect for public servants. Opinion columnists wrote about the contrast between Sarah's behavior and James Thompson's conduct, using it as a metaphor for larger social issues. University professors began using the incident as a case study in ethics and behavioral psychology classes. Local politicians rushed to associate themselves with the story, issuing statements supporting the military and condemning civilian attacks on service members. The Mayor of London announced plans to increase security at future royal events and implement stricter penalties for those who disrupted ceremonial occasions. International visitors to London began specifically asking tour guides about the Royal Guard, wanting to know more about their training and discipline after seeing the viral video. Tourism to royal sites actually increased as people hoped to witness similar displays of military precision and professionalism. Sarah's attempts to control the narrative continued to backfire spectacularly. Every interview she gave only made her appear more entitled and out of touch. When she hired a public relations firm to help repair her image, they quit within days after determining that her case was essentially hopeless, given the overwhelming video evidence and public sentiment. The contrast between the two main characters couldn't have been starker. While James Thompson was receiving praise, commendations, and respect from around the world, Sarah was facing legal consequences, professional ruin, and public humiliation. The incident had revealed the true character of both individuals in ways that no amount of pretense could have hidden. Military recruitment offices reported increased interest from young people who had been inspired by James Thompson's example. "I want to serve with honor like that soldier," became a common refrain among applicants. The incident had inadvertently become one of the most effective recruitment tools the military had seen in years. As Sarah was dragged away by security, the crowd's attention turned fully to supporting James Thompson and his fellow guards. Someone started singing "God Save the King," and within moments, hundreds of voices had joined in. The patriotic song echoed through the streets, creating a powerful moment of unity that transformed the negative incident into something unexpectedly beautiful and inspiring. The royal procession continued past the scene, but not before several members of the royal family made subtle gestures of acknowledgement toward the guards. A slight nod here, a longer gaze there. Small signs of respect that didn't break protocol but clearly communicated their appreciation for the soldiers' professionalism under difficult circumstances. Children who had been frightened by Sarah's aggressive behavior were now asking their parents questions about the soldier's bravery. "Why didn't he hit her back?" asked a 7-year-old boy. His mother explained that real strength sometimes means not fighting back, especially when you're protecting something important. The boy nodded solemnly and waved his flag more enthusiastically at the remaining guards. Social media was already exploding with videos of the incident. Within minutes, hashtags like Ask Your Royal Guard Hero and Respect Our Soldiers were trending worldwide. The footage showed clearly what had happened: an entitled woman attacking a serviceman who showed remarkable restraint and professionalism. The court of public opinion was swift and unanimous in its judgment. A group of tourists from Australia had captured the entire incident on video from multiple angles. "Mate, that's the most impressive display of self-control I've ever seen," said one of them to his companions. "That soldier is an absolute legend." They immediately began posting the footage online with captions praising James Thompson's conduct and condemning Sarah's behavior. Local business owners who had set up stalls along the parade route began approaching the barrier to show their support for the guards. A baker offered free pastries to the soldiers once their duty was complete, while a cafe owner promised free meals for any Royal Guard member who visited his establishment. The community was rallying around those who served and protected them. Meanwhile, Sarah was being processed by security personnel in a nearby building. She continued to insist that she had done nothing wrong and that the soldier had somehow provoked her attack. When shown the video evidence of her behavior, she became even more defensive, claiming that the footage didn't tell the whole story and that people didn't understand her side of the situation. Back at the parade route, the atmosphere had completely transformed. What had started as a shocking disruption had become a celebration of military professionalism and community spirit. People were sharing stories about their own family members who had served in the military, creating connections and bonds that hadn't existed before the incident. A reporter managed to speak with the elderly man who had saluted James Thompson. "I served in Korea 60 years ago," he said with pride in his voice. "I know what it takes to stand at attention like that, especially when someone is attacking you." That young man showed more discipline and honor in 5 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. The crowd began to disperse slowly, but many people lingered, reluctant to leave the scene of such an inspiring display of character. Some approached the barriers just to get closer to the guards, wanting to express their thanks and admiration. The soldiers remained at their posts, but the slight relaxation in their posture suggested they were aware of and grateful for the support. James Thompson's fellow guards were clearly proud of their colleagues' conduct. Though they couldn't speak or break formation, their body language communicated respect and solidarity. They had all trained for scenarios like this, but seeing it handled with such grace under real pressure reinforced their own commitment to their duties. The incident was becoming a teaching moment that extended far beyond the immediate crowd. Videos were being shared in military training academies as examples of perfect restraint under pressure. Parents were using the story to teach their children about dignity and self-control. The negative actions of one entitled individual had inadvertently created a positive example that would inspire thousands of people. The slap echoed across the street like a gunshot, and for a moment, complete silence fell over the entire crowd. Sarah's hand had connected with James Thompson's face with surprising force, leaving a red mark on his cheek that was visible even from a distance. The soldier didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even blink. His eyes remained fixed straight ahead as if nothing had happened at all. What happened next would be talked about for years to come. Instead of the shocked silence continuing, a slow clap began from somewhere in the crowd. It started with one person, then 2, then 5, and within seconds, hundreds of people were applauding James Thompson's incredible restraint and professionalism. The applause grew into cheers, and the cheers grew into something resembling a standing ovation for a man who couldn't even acknowledge it. Sarah stood there with her hand still raised, completely stunned by the crowd's reaction. She had expected support, or at least understanding, for her actions. In her mind, she had been asserting her rights as a citizen. Instead, she found herself facing a wall of disapproval and disgust from hundreds of strangers who had witnessed her assault on a serviceman. "Shame on you," called out a woman holding a toddler. "That man is serving his country and you just attacked him." Her words were picked up by others in the crowd, and soon a chorus of similar sentiments was being directed at Sarah. The tide of public opinion had turned completely against her, and she was beginning to realize the magnitude of her mistake. An elderly gentleman who had served in the military decades earlier pushed his way closer to the barrier. With tears in his eyes, he saluted James Thompson, who still couldn't respond or acknowledge the gesture. "Thank you for your service, son," the old man called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You're a credit to your uniform and your country." The royal carriage was now directly in front of the commotion, and members of the royal family could clearly see what was happening. Their expressions showed a mixture of concern for the situation and admiration for the guards' composure. Under pressure, protocol prevented them from stopping or intervening, but their presence added another layer of gravity to the unfolding drama. Security finally reached Sarah and began to escort her away from the Royal Guard formation. She resisted at first, continuing to shout about her rights and demanding that someone listen to her complaints about the soldiers' rudeness. Her protests fell on deaf ears as the crowd's support for James Thompson grew louder and more passionate. "Look at that man's discipline," shouted a teacher who had brought her class to see the parade. "Children, that's what real strength and honor look like." Her students, who had been frightened by Sarah's aggressive behavior, now looked at the guard with awe and respect. The educational moment that was supposed to be about royal tradition had become a lesson in character and professionalism. A street performer who had been entertaining crowds earlier that morning put down his guitar and started a chant, "Guard, guard, guard." The rhythmic chanting was picked up by more and more people until it became a thunderous show of support that could be heard for blocks. James Thompson remained motionless, but those who looked carefully could see the slightest hint of emotion in his eyes. Sarah was now being physically removed from the scene, but she continued to struggle against the security personnel. "This isn't over," she screamed back toward the crowd. "You'll all hear from my lawyers. That soldier assaulted me." Her claims were met with laughter and jeers from the spectators, who had all witnessed exactly what had happened and knew she was lying. The contrast between Sarah's continued hysterics and the crowd's celebration of James Thompson's conduct was stark. While she became more unhinged with each passing moment, the soldier maintained his composure with an almost superhuman level of self-control. The crowd recognized this immediately and responded with even more enthusiastic support. News reporters who had been covering the royal parade quickly shifted their focus to the incident, recognizing that this story would likely overshadow the ceremonial events they had originally come to document. Cameras zoomed in on James Thompson's face, capturing the red mark from the slap and his unwavering professional expression despite the assault he had just endured. Without warning, Sarah ducked under the rope barrier, her expensive heels clicking against the cobblestones as she rushed toward the Royal Guard formation. The security personnel immediately noticed the breach, but Sarah was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. Her singular focus was on getting to what she perceived as the perfect vantage point, completely ignoring the gasps and shouts from the crowd behind her. James Thompson maintained his professional composure even as he noticed the woman approaching from his peripheral vision. His training had prepared him for various scenarios, but dealing with entitled civilians during ceremonial duties required a delicate balance of firmness and restraint. He kept his eyes forward, hoping that security would handle the situation before it escalated. "Get out of my way," Sarah shouted as she approached the line of guards. "I have every right to be here. Do you know who I am?" Her voice carried over the crowd, causing heads to turn and phones to start recording. The irony was lost on her that in seeking attention and the perfect photo opportunity, she was about to become the center of attention in ways she never intended. The crowd behind the barrier began to react with a mixture of shock and anger. Parents pulled their children closer. Elderly spectators shook their heads in disbelief, and several people began filming the unfolding scene. The festive atmosphere that had filled the air just moments before was quickly being replaced by tension and discomfort. Sarah reached James Thompson's position and, without any hesitation, placed her hands firmly on his chest and began pushing. "Move!" she demanded, her face flushed with anger and frustration. "I need to get a better view and you're in my way." Her designer handbag swung wildly as she continued to shove against the soldier's uniform. James remained absolutely still, his training taking over completely. Despite the physical contact and verbal abuse, he kept his eyes fixed straight ahead, his jaw set firmly, and his hands positioned precisely as they had been drilled to maintain. The discipline required to stand motionless while being physically assaulted was testament to years of rigorous military training and personal character. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. Shouts of "Leave him alone" and "Show some respect" began to rise from the spectators. A war veteran in the crowd, recognizing the guard's remarkable restraint, called out, "That soldier is serving his country with honor, and you should be ashamed of yourself." His words were met with approving murmurs and nods from those around him. Security personnel were now moving quickly toward Sarah's position, but the damage to the ceremonial atmosphere had already been done. The royal carriage was approaching the exact spot where the disturbance was taking place, and protocol demanded that the situation be resolved immediately without disrupting the procession or endangering anyone involved. Sarah continued her assault on James Thompson, growing more aggressive as she realized he wasn't responding to her demands. She began striking his chest and arms with her fists, her expensive jewelry catching the morning sunlight as she flailed wildly. "I said move! Are you deaf? I'm a taxpayer and I have rights," she screamed, her voice becoming increasingly shrill. Contrast between Sarah's behavior and James's professionalism was striking. While she displayed every sign of losing complete control of herself, he remained the picture of military discipline and honor. His fellow guards maintained their positions as well, demonstrating the collective strength and training of the Royal Guard unit. Children in the crowd were now crying, frightened by the aggressive scene unfolding before them. Parents were covering their eyes and trying to explain why the lady was being so mean to the nice soldier. The elderly couple who had been waiting since dawn looked heartbroken that their special day had been ruined by one person's selfishness and entitled behavior. As Sarah raised her hand to deliver what would become the most documented slap in recent royal parade history, the crowd held its breath. Cameras were recording from every angle, and the moment was about to become viral, content that would be shared millions of times across social media platforms around the world. The morning sun cast golden rays across Westminster Bridge as thousands of people gathered along the parade route. Sarah Mitchell adjusted her expensive designer handbag and pushed through the crowd, her perfectly manicured nails gripping her smartphone. She had spent 3 hours getting ready that morning, choosing her most expensive outfit for what she considered her rightful place at the front of the barrier. The Royal Guard stood at attention, their red uniforms pristine and their black bearskin hats perfectly positioned. Among them was James Thompson, a 24-year-old soldier who had served his country with honor for 6 years. His face remained stoic, eyes fixed straight ahead, as he had been trained to do during countless hours of drill practice. Sarah had arrived late to the parade, expecting the crowd to part for her simply because she believed she deserved the best view. When she discovered that families had been waiting since dawn to secure their spots behind the rope barriers, her mood quickly soured. She began pushing past elderly couples and children, muttering complaints about how inconsiderate everyone was being. "Excuse me, but we've been here since 5 in the morning," said an elderly woman holding her young grandson's hand. The little boy was clutching a small Union Jack flag, his eyes wide with excitement at seeing the royal procession. Sarah barely glanced at them. "I have important business to attend to. I can't waste my entire day standing behind people who clearly don't understand proper etiquette." She continued shoving her way forward, stepping on feet and knocking into people without so much as an apology. The crowd began to murmur disapprovingly as Sarah's behavior became more aggressive. A middle-aged man tried to reason with her, explaining that everyone had been waiting patiently and that there was a proper queue system. Sarah's response was to raise her voice and declare that she had every right to be at the front, because she paid more taxes than most of the people there. As the royal carriages approached in the distance, the excitement in the crowd reached fever pitch. Children were lifted onto shoulders, cameras were raised, and a collective hush fell over the gathered spectators. The precision of the Royal Guard's movements was mesmerizing as they maintained their formation alongside the slow-moving procession. Sarah had managed to push her way to within a few feet of the rope barrier, but her view was still partially blocked by a tall man in front of her. Her frustration reached a boiling point as she realized she wouldn't have the unobstructed photographs she had planned to post on her social media accounts. The sense of entitlement that had driven her behavior all morning was about to lead her to make a decision that would change everything. The sound of horses' hooves on cobblestone grew louder, and the crowd pressed forward slightly in anticipation. Royal Guards maintained their disciplined stance, their eyes scanning the crowd professionally while keeping their primary focus on their ceremonial duties. James Thompson could see the lead carriage approaching, carrying members of the royal family who waved graciously at the cheering crowd. Sarah's patience had completely evaporated. She looked around desperately, calculating her next move. The rope barrier was just inches away, and beyond it stood the Royal Guard. In her mind, she had already justified what she was about to do. She convinced herself that as a taxpayer and citizen, she had every right to get the perfect view she wanted, regardless of the rules or other people's feelings. The moment of decision arrived as the royal carriage drew closer. Sarah could hear the crowd's cheers growing louder, cameras clicking frantically and children calling out in excitement. But all she could focus on was her own desire to get closer, to get the perfect shot, to prove to herself and everyone else that she was more important than the people who had waited patiently for hours.